After almost 20 years out in the cold, Zimbabwe is once again reaching out to the world. Since his inauguration last November, President Mnangagwa has been working round the clock to get Zimbabwe back on the inside. And it's been a lot of work. In January, ED went to Davos for the World Economic Forum. This is the first time a Zimbabwean head of state was invited there. He's traveled in the region, he's gone to the AU, he's even gone to Francophone Africa, a region we never used to see Zimbabwe much. We have also seen top diplomats from around visiting Zimbabwe. Just hours after his inauguration back in November, ED met Rory Stewart, who was the British Minister for Africa at the time. In January, the Permanent Undersecretary at the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, Simon MacDonald, visited Harare. We had the UK Minister for Africa, Harriet Baldwin, here in February. In March, the head of the UNDP was here, the highest-ranking UN official to visit Zim in a very, very long time. Also in March, Russia's powerful Foreign Affairs Minister, Sergei Lavrov, visited. In April, the EU sent one of its top officials. And then ED was invited to China by President Xi Jinping. In case you didn't know, China has a grading system for countries that it deals with, kind of like a league table. Zimbabwe was given the comprehensive strategic relationship status. Now that category is quite high on the table. In fact, we moved up about 8 spots on the China relationship table. We even recently had some American senators coming down to Zim. Now, these are different times indeed, but we must ask, what does this all mean? What exactly is the plan for this re-engagement? Is there even a plan? Have we decided what exactly it is that we want out of this? Do we even know what we want? We are engaging Russia and China on one hand, but also speaking to the West. Now some see this as a contradiction, but it's really not. Diplomacy is all about national interest. It's about looking out for yourself. Make no mistakes, every country that's out there is always looking out for its best interests. And this time, we need to do the same. Under Mugabe, it was all about political rhetoric and ideology. But now, it's really about the economy. There are 2 major events on the diplomatic front this week. In Washington, Zimbabwe is attending the IMF and World Bank meetings there. We are desperate to clear out debts, but we also need even more money. So it's a bit of a fix. And in London, the Commonwealth is meeting. Remember, Zimbabwe left the Commonwealth in 2003. Zim had been suspended for violating human rights, and Mugabe withdrew from the club. It was a bit like saying, hey, I refuse to join any club that won't take me as a member. I'm out. Now Zimbabwe is trying to get back in. But let's talk about that for a moment. Do we really need the Commonwealth? This is a club for former British colonies. Why do we need it? Well, there are some advantages. First, there are scholarships, and this would make Christmas Show very happy. There's money for our artists, and our athletes can participate at the Commonwealth Games. But if we were to go back, it must really be worth it. We can't join the Commonwealth if the only advantage is the chance of our leaders having tea and sandwiches with Her Royal Highness Queen Elizabeth II. What's in it for us? Well, it must be about the economy. The Commonwealth is a big market with over 2 billion people. The amount of trade within the Commonwealth is about 600 billion. Some say it will reach $1 trillion by 2020. It's a lot of money. So yes, we can't really ignore the Commonwealth, no. In fact, even countries like Rwanda, which were never British colonies, have joined the Commonwealth. This is the reality. The way things stand for Zimbabwe right now, we need more friends and less enemies. We've been on our own for too long. It never works. The more clubs we join, the better. But we can't go there for tea and sandwiches. Even for this colonial club, we need to go there with a plan. Whatever ED is doing out there, he needs to make sure that Zimbabweans back home actually see the benefits. It's an election year. So he needs to make sure that all this talk of billions and re-engagement makes sense to a voter in Bikita or Murewa. International re-engagement is a must, but it must bring better roads, better hospitals, better schools, and as ED himself puts it, it must be about jobs, jobs, jobs. There's a big sale over there in government. Finance Minister Patrick Chinamasa has announced that the government is privatizing dozens of state enterprises. In total, the government will sell shares in at least 35 parastatals. We're talking Net1, Tel1, POSB, CSC, Zupco, Willowville, and many others. Some 17 mines are owned by government are now on the market. Some companies are being sold, and a few others are even being shut down completely. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? Well, before you answer that, have a look at some of the numbers. 107, that's the number of parastatals we have. Of these companies, over 70 are technically insolvent. They're broke. 300 million. That's the total of the losses that these companies are making every year. 3 billion, that's how much these companies owe. 1 billion, that's how much these companies owe each other. Even between themselves, these guys don't pay back the money. And another number, 1 billion. That's how much these companies spend on salaries and perks for officials every year. These companies have fed a lot of people. So that question again, is privatization a good thing or a bad thing? With these kind of numbers, the answer is kind of obvious. This is a positive move by the government, and it's about time too. But that's just part of the picture here. There are many more questions to ask. First, who are we selling to? We don't want to end up with all these companies in the hands of a few guys just because they're politically connected. This is how Russia ended up with all these Russian oligarchs that run the country now. We don't want to end up with people selling companies to their friends or even to themselves. We need to make sure that ordinary folks have a chance to own shares in these companies. In other countries, citizens are grouped into trusts that help them to buy shares. We can't allow these companies to move from being big loss-making companies that benefit a few to being big private companies that still benefit a few. We've seen this before. Second, are we going to get good prices for these companies? A lot of them are drowning in debt. So who's buying them and at what price? And how about Air Zimbabwe? Why isn't it on the list when it must be? This is one company that has shown us what happens when a state company is run badly. Here's a company that we all know can do well, but has basically collapsed. They had 18 planes in 1980. Now just 3, and these planes don't work half the time. In 1999, Air Zim carried 1 million passengers. Now they just do 20,000. So the government is trying to replace Air Zimbabwe with a new airline, Zimbabwe Airways. And it's been really, really murky. So yes, let's sell these loss-making companies. Great. But all we ask for is transparency. We need to salvage credible buyers. We need more people involved. So let's do it, but for once, let's do it right.